Okay, in this video, I'm going to walk you through 4.4 worksheet. Alright, so here it's saying, let 3, -8 be a point on the terminal side of theta, find these values. So first thing I'm going to do is always try and draw it on a coordinate system so you know which quadrant you're going to be in. +3, -8 means you're in quadrant 4. You also need to find out what the radius is, so I use Pythagoras' identity or theorem here. So x squared plus y squared, right there, r squared is equal to 73, so r is going to be the square root of 73. Then the next thing I do is look at the cosine adjacent over hypotenuse. Adjacent here is 3, the hypotenuse or the radius is the square root of 73. So I put those values here, and then of course you rationalize that. For cosecant, it's hypotenuse over opposite. Remember, it's the reciprocal of sine, and sine is y. So you're going to be using r, which is the square root of 73. Opposite of the angle is -8. So you would have negative square root of 73 divided by 8. Okay, the negative is assigned to the entire ratio, not just the numerator or the denominator, but it did come from the denominator. Okay, and then tangent is opposite over adjacent. Opposite is -8 divided by the adjacent, which is 3. Okay, all right. Problem number 2. Now it's telling you let theta be an angle in quadrant 3. So it's telling you it's in quadrant 3 such that sine is opposite over hypotenuse. So opposite is going to be 4, hypotenuse is going to be 5. When I draw this in the correct quadrant, you see that your y has to be negative. So here you're applying this negative to your opposite or your y direction to the 4. You're not going to apply the negative to the 5 because that's going to be your radius. Okay. Once you have your 2 numbers, you can find the third one by using Pythagoras' theorem. So all I did here was, I don't know what x is, but I do know what y is, and I know what r is. Don't forget to include parentheses around the negative because it's going to be negative times negative. If you don't include those, you're going to get the incorrect answer. You have x squared plus 16 is equal to 25, which means x squared is equal to 9. You're going to choose x being positive or negative, but you choose negative because x has to be negative in quadrant 3. So then we're using secant and cotangent. Secant is hypotenuse over adjacent. So hypotenuse is 5, adjacent is your -3. So that's why we have it here. Cotangent is adjacent over opposite, which is going to be adjacent is -3, opposite is -4, but the negatives will cancel, so it's just going to be 3/4. Okay. Type 3 problem. In this particular case, it's telling you it's in quadrant 1, and it's giving you a cosecant. If you remember, cosecant is the reciprocal of sine. Sine is opposite over hypotenuse, so cosecant is going to be hypotenuse over opposite. Okay, here I put in the numbers. 5 is your hypotenuse, 4 is the opposite, so you don't know what x is. Again, you're going to solve for x. It happens to be the same numbers in the previous problem. You have a plus or -3, but this time, because we're in quadrant 1, x has to be positive. And then you're going to do tangent and cosine. So tangent is opposite over adjacent. Opposite is 4. Adjacent would be 3, so 4/3. For cosine, it'll be adjacent over hypotenuse. Adjacent is going to be 3. Hypotenuse will be 5. So you have that answer right there. Okay. Next problem. This is a type 4. Here you're going to be given 2 pieces of information. In this one, we know that tangent is going to be negative. Now remember, which 2 quadrants are tangent negative? Well, tangent can be negative in quadrant 2 or can be negative in quadrant 4. We also know that cosecant has to be negative. Cosecant is the reciprocal of sine. So sine is negative in quadrant 3 or quadrant 4. So we have some choices here, but we're always going to pick the one that matches both. So since quadrant 4 tangent is negative and cosecant is negative, we're going to choose quadrant 4 to draw our triangle. So here's our triangle. Tangent, if you remember, tangent is going to be your opposite over adjacent. So opposite 15, adjacent 8. you can assign the negative to your y value because y is negative in quadrant 4. Once you have those two labeled, you can go ahead and solve for r. In this case, r will be 17. Okay, so what is sine? Sine is opposite over hypotenuse. Opposite, negative 15 over radius, 17. Cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse. Adjacent is 8 over 17. Okay. All right, now we're going to talk about your reference angles. Remember, reference angles are not the same thing as coterminal angles. Reference angles are always less than 90 degrees and are always going to be positive. It is referring to the angle between the line, the terminal side of the line, and your x-axis. So I highlighted these in purple. Negative 108 degrees. Remember, change it to standard form. It will help by adding 360 degrees. You get the 252 degrees. Then, because it's in quadrant 3, you're going to subtract the 180 because all you want is that purple line. So here we find the reference angle to be 72 degrees. Okay. For the second one, 7 over 5, you're going to determine that's also in quadrant 3. But this case, we only want to subtract pi because pi in 180 degrees is a straight line. So we're getting rid of the part that is not highlighted. So then we convert that back into a fraction and we find out that the reference angle is going to be 2/5 pi. Okay. Next problem. Here we're given a type 2, also finding the reference angle. Notice that the angle you're first given is not in standard form. Convert it to standard form. Here we got 216 degrees. That happens to be in quadrant 3 as well. And then you're subtracting the 180 from quadrants 1 and 2. So we get 36 degrees. Okay. For the second one, we are using 3.6, which is definitely a coterminal angle. Make it into standard form by subtracting the 2 pi, and you get 1.6 pi. 1.6, remember, that's more than 1.5, but less than 2. So you're going to be in quadrant 4 here. In order to get quadrant 4, the angle, we want to say 2 pi minus the angle that we're given, or in standard form, and that will be the answer of your reference angle, the part that's in purple. Okay, these are really, I think they're really actually kind of fun, and it will help you become knowledgeable in which quadrant you should choose. Sine, positive, quadrants 1 and 2, because that's y, and cosine, positive in quadrants 1, everything's positive in quadrant 1, and in quadrant 4. Which ones have both of them in common? Well, quadrant 1, since it's common to both. Okay. Cosine positive, 1 and 4. Tangent is positive in 1 and 3. So what's in common? Quadrant 1. Okay. Over here, sine is positive. Remember, that's y. Y is positive in quadrants 1 and 2. Secant, which is the reciprocal of cosine. Cosine is positive in quadrants. Cosine is negative in quadrants 2 and 3. So when we're looking at this one, what's in common? Quadrant 2. Okay, and the last one, sine is negative, y is negative in quadrants 3 and 4, and cotangent is positive in quadrants 1 and 3. What's in common? Quadrant 3. All right, that concludes the walkthrough of 4.4. Let me know if you have any questions.